There we go.
Okay,
Welcome,
welcome
everyone.
everybody.
Going
Oh.
global. You guys
yeah.
ready for this?
Already,
Yeah.
keep going. Do your thing. It's all good.
Thank
We're
you,
live.
everybody, for joining us. We're here today with an amazing webinar with a bunch of panelists, all experts in their own fields. We're joined by Pearl Ausch from First Choice Shipping. She's also going to be moderating with me. Thank you, Pearl, for organizing and all the hard work we put into this, right? We were actually talking last night saying that we're both very busy and most of the planning for this, if not all, happened after hours, after the traditional 9 to 5. So thank you to all the panelists for being available and making this happen today. We're excited.
Oh yes. So me and David were speaking several weeks ago to see how can we make something really interesting and cool for the audience. There's obviously a lot of webinars that happen on a daily basis, multiple webinars happening on a daily basis, and we want to change this up a little bit where people stay in the entire time, keep it interesting, interactive between the panelists and the audience. So we were like, who can we bring on the best of the best? And you guys have literally the best of the best right now. So I just want to say thank you to the panelists for joining. You guys are very near and dear to us, and we really appreciate you joining us today. It means a lot, and I know it means a lot to the audience as well. So guys, everybody that joined, we want you guys to be as involved as you possibly can or want to be. So please feel free to jump in any time, ask any questions that you have. And at the end of the webinar, we're actually going to open the audience up to the actual webinar. So this is really cool. It's not something that happens really often, but we're going to do this special for you guys where we're going to take it off record mode and we're going to bring you guys in as panelists. So you could ask any questions from some of the amazing people we have on today. So, okay. So David, are we getting started?
We're getting started.
We're doing it.
Before we went live, we were learning a little bit about our panelists, our speakers today. Just for the sake of anyone who wants to watch this, play it back later. Let's do that again. Maybe we'll start with anybody who didn't go. So maybe I'll get started. I'll tell you guys a little bit about myself and a little bit about the Ecom Cooperative. So my name is Dayon. I'm the founder of Amazon Experts, also one of the founders of the Ecom Cooperative. For any of you who don't know what the Ecom Cooperative is, now hopefully you will. We're an organization, a community that's just aimed at connecting providers and sellers and building this community in the e-commerce and Amazon space. So we put together in-person events, webinars, meetups, and a whole bunch of other wonderful things, all for the sake of connecting everyone, and hopefully everyone will grow and learn together. So that's a little bit about me. Pearl, tell them a little bit about First Choice Shipping, tell them a little bit about yourself, and we'll move on to the rest.
Sure. Okay. So hi, everybody. I'm Pearl, Chief Operating Officer at First Choice Shipping. Basically, what we are is an all-in solution for sellers that are looking to expand with Amazon globally. So really, we're that person that will hold your hand from A to Z to get this thing going. So if you're looking to expand to Amazon Canada or Amazon UK, which I'm just going to share a little bit data soon to see, what you could expect in terms of numbers, but we are going to be that solution where we could tell you this is what needs to happen, including the actual shipping, which we specialize in small parcel shipping. We work with the carriers like UPS, DHL, and FedEx. We offer you their services, but up to 60 to 80% off the retail rates. So you could have a lot of savings and at the same time have a variety. So yeah, that's basically it. I'm really excited to be here today to give you guys education. And I think that's the most powerful thing we could, as humans, help ourselves with is really giving ourselves education. As they say, education is power. And you guys are going to get a lot of that very soon. Okay. And I guess I'll hand it over to Liran on my right. Liran, go for it.
Are we doing introductions?
Yep. Just do a short intro.
Liran Hirschkorn. I'm the CEO and founder of Incrementum Digital. We help sellers scale and brands scale on Amazon, mostly using the power of Amazon advertising and Amazon DSP. I've been in the e-commerce space since 2014. And I think we just put up a poll for those of you that are watching this on Zoom. we wanted to know where you are, what kind of seller you are, brand owner, private label, or reseller, or both, or not on Amazon. So it'd be interesting to get this and share. And I think we want to ask also if you're selling international versus US as well. Oh, okay. I think we have one question. So
Perfect.
Okay. So let's move on. Destaney, tell us a little bit about BetterAMS. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, of course. So my name's Destaney Wishon, CEO of BetterAMS. We do Amazon advertising similar to Liran. We do sponsor products, sponsor brands, display, and DSP. And that's about it. All I do is Amazon advertising.
Okay, great.
All you do. Very, very humble, Destaney. All you do.
and Walmart, and goes to Walmart.
Definitely.
I go to Walmart pretty frequently. Online grocery delivery, best thing ever.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Okay, next.
Becky, tell us a little bit about eComEngine and Feedback 5.
Sure. I'm Becky Trowbridge. I'm the digital marketing manager here at eComEngine. I've been working here for about 5 years, started in the content space and have just kind of moved around on the marketing team. And our flagship tool is Feedback 5, which is a feedback and review software. So we're going to be talking a lot today about international reviews and feedback and how that impacts you as you're getting started in a new marketplace.
Okay, great. Excited. All right. Yeah, tell us a little bit about your background and Payoneer.
Sure. Thank you, David. Hi, everyone. This is Jana. So I'm actually, it's a hello from Seattle, Washington, the Amazon world here. I'm the SVP for Payoneer, managing the Payoneer's Americas business. As some of you probably know, Payoneer specializing in cross-border payments, really to make your payment from e-commerce marketplace like Amazon simpler, faster, and more secure. So prior to Payoneer, I actually worked at Amazon for about 9 years. I was managing the US global selling, really to help the US based brand owners and resellers to really expand internationally into Europe, UK, and the other parts of the international marketplace. So it's really nice to be here. I've got a lot to share with the webinar today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for joining us.
Okay, Jana, go for it.
Hey everyone, my name is Jana. I'm the owner of Wildly Translations, and we help sellers expand to all international marketplaces when it comes to content. And we do that all for all global marketplaces. That's it.
Okay,
Awesome.
great. Stefan.
Hi, everybody. I'm Stefan, one of the co-founders of Taxually. And at Taxually, we take the dull part away from growing internationally, which is helping you with getting set up for VAT purposes and sorting out your compliance obligations across Europe primarily, but also we have some services in other geographies. So whenever you think of the boring stuff that you don't want to deal with, think of Taxually.
Okay. And last but certainly not least, Chris.
Hey, that's right. I'm a co-founder and managing partner of Global Wired Advisors. We're the premier investment bank selling digital-first businesses. That's the new hot word. Helping founders, owners go through a institutional level Fortune 500 transaction process to get as much money as they possibly can for their largest asset.
Okay. All right. Well, Global Wired Advisors are doing some good things. Anybody who is not already following them should definitely be following them. Everyone here, I think, pretty much is a worthy follow. So look us all up, and everyone's delivering value in their own way. We're very excited to jump right in today. As mentioned before, this is an open forum style. We're going to be asking our panelists questions. Pearl, why don't you go ahead and ask the first question?
Sure. So before I get started, I do want to share that I decided last night I'm going to go ahead and email some of our, I would say, biggest clients, 5, 6, 8-figure sellers, and from different categories. And I was curious to hear, before getting onto this webinar today, what does the data look like in terms of international selling for these sellers? And I was just blown away by the sales people are doing now globally. And this is why this is so important to have this conversation and speak about how you guys could do things even better than what you're doing right now or if you're not selling globally, why you should be. So I'm just going to share with you some data, and then we'll use that as a segue and we'll get started. So I spoke to one of our sellers that are selling electronics, and this is what he's doing right now in Japan. He's doing about 23% of his sales in the US, and he's doing a significant portion of sales in the US. We're talking about somebody that is a $28 million seller and, you know, literally killing it in Japan. I think that's amazing. And I think that's something that people should look into. Obviously, you know, you want to make sure that the category that you're selling it is meant for that. And there's a lot of tools and resources to be able to find that out. And we could actually set you up with an Amazon rep that maybe could help you look into that if you're eligible to have an Amazon rep. Typically, you have to be doing at least $1 million in sales in the US. But for a lot of sellers that are doing that, you might want to reach out and we could, you know, see if the data works for you as well. We spoke to another seller that's in the kitchen category. He's doing 56% in the US. Compared to that, he's doing 42% in the EU and the UK. That's crazy. These are huge, huge numbers. Another one that's selling toys. He's doing about 40% of whatever he's doing in the US in Canada. And he sees that fluctuating sometimes up to 50%. So these are sellers that, you know, have been struggling a little bit in the US market where it's a little bit saturated, and they're seeing their numbers continuously going up in these global markets. Another seller that's in the car accessories category is doing 25% of whatever he's doing in the US, in Canada, and he's doing 10% in the EU, but he says by the end of the year, he's expecting to do about 50%, which he says he could easily get to based on, you know, the math that he's been doing. So guys, there's huge potential. There's something, you know, really special about selling globally. And let's
we have a question from the audience, from Malik, asking if we're talking about a brand owner or wholesale products when you're talking about these numbers.
So these are all private labelers. Yes.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, great question. Okay, so this is the poll. These are the responses. Okay, so we have 68% of the audience are actually private labelers, 9% resellers, 11% are doing both, and 12% are not selling on Amazon. Okay, that's great. Okay, so David, let's get started. Let's start with the first question.
Okay, you want to go with the first question or should I?
Let's do it. Let's do it. Okay,
I'll go.
so Jana, how about we start with you?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, sure.
So what are some of the most often mistakes that you're seeing sellers are doing when they're expanding into new marketplaces? Let's start with that.
Right. So my forte is content. So I'm going to be covering that since there's like tons of other people that are going to cover other aspects. So when it comes to content, definitely like people don't treat the content the same way as they do treat their US content or like UK content because they don't understand the language. So they just don't think it's not, it's not important. And when they launch the product, people like just use, Amazon Launchpad service, which is basically a machine translation, or they use Google Translate, and then you basically don't get anything like from that. It's like a lot of mumbo jumbo, like a lot of things that don't make sense. Sometimes it can even sound offensive to a new audience. So basically, like when you start selling, it doesn't mean it's going to affect your sales, but in about like 6 and 7 months, you're going to see that your sales are not doing that great. And mostly it's going to be because of the content that people don't understand. Maybe reviews are going to go down. So a lot of things will be affected by content. And I know a lot of people don't think that content is important, but at one point in your Amazon journey, it will affect whatever you're doing, especially if this is something that is important for your product in terms of like, maybe you're selling like beauty products or like baby products. People want to know the formula, they don't know how to use it. And what people don't understand, they're highly unlikely going to buy. So this is like one of the mistakes I see that happens all the time. And what is really interesting is that you can be like an 8-figure seller in the US marketplace, but you can make tons of mistakes in selling in Europe or Japan or any other marketplaces. It's really not connected. Like you can be super successful in the US and you would not understand how it works like on other international marketplaces. And that just kind of, it's very, very interesting because you would know that these sellers know how to, do the content, like PPC, like all of that. But I think like one of the reasons why they are not doing a great job is because they just outsource a lot of things to their VAs. They don't know how to do keyword research separately for each marketplace. A lot of things what people do is like they translate the keywords. If you have a keyword like in the US, it doesn't necessarily even have to mean that it's going to be the same one in the UK. Like we recently had a seller, she was selling diapers, and then you don't say even diapers in the UK, you say nappies, but she just took that content, she she just copied the content for her UK listings, and she was ranked for wrong keyword, because like in the UK they use diapers for adult diapers, not for baby diapers, which was her product. Also like tons of like keyword opportunities are like way different. Like for instance, like in the US she would use diaper changing station, and this was like a top converting keyword, but in the UK you don't have any changing stations. So this is something which is completely irrelevant for this product, and like tons of other things, like also like in the US you have Spanish because of the Hispanic population. So you also want to include that in your listings or in your backend. Why would you keep those Spanish keywords in the UK market? Like the Hispanic population is not big over there, and they're basically not bilingual. So there are like tons of things that people don't think about. And if you compare like English, which is language that we all speak, just imagine like what are the differences between other languages like German that has like big compound words, or other languages that have like different structure. And what's really interesting is like all these keywords tools that we use, like for instance, Helium 10 or like, other tools, they're like by default set to reflect English language and its structure. So like if you go to like Helium 10, like to Magnet, for instance, like you would see the word count is usually set as number 2. Like, so you get like two different words to form a long tail keyword. And in German, like you would have to switch that to number 1. Because of the big chunky keywords, you would not get them in the results as often as you would when you change it to number 1. And that's basically like a common word in German. And a lot of your competitors would be ranked for that, and you wouldn't. It's a very surprising fact that a lot of your competitors don't know what they're doing on the, let's say, German marketplace, the biggest marketplace after the US. Like from what recently I've done was like actually comparing this diaper bag at like 15 different top competitors, and a lot of them were not actually ranked for any of the very important keywords. Like from 15 of them, there was like maybe 2 of them who had like broad keyword in their title, but they didn't have any exact keywords or any other relevant keywords at all. And that just shows like how much more you could do with your content on these marketplaces, and like easily get ahead of your competitors if you knew how to do proper keyword research, or if you know how to optimize this content in another language by someone who knows how to do that.
Jana, is Japan bigger than Germany at the moment, or is Germany bigger than Japan?
Germany is bigger. It's basically Japan is the 4th marketplace. It's somewhere with the same size as the UK at this point. So Germany is definitely number 2, and it's really interesting for Germany because you get access to like all these other countries that don't have Amazon. They get redirected and they buy from German Amazon. But what's really important about the content, and I don't know if the audience knows this, but the country that gives out the most refunds is Germany, because people really want that good content, like good details. If they don't understand, if they were misled by the content or something else, they would return the product and you'll have to refund them. So that's also something to have in mind. Being Germany one of the most important marketplaces,
and
out there.
There's a greater emphasis on quality, right?
Oh yeah, like they want to see like a really good, and if you want to present your product as like a high quality product in Germany, and then your content does not reflect that, they would doubt that your product is like really, really good. Because like one of the listings that I was also like looking at, they're having like a really good quality product, as at least they say that, but like then the 5th bullet says we provide German support 24/7, and it's full of mistakes. It's like broken German in the 5th bullet. And then you're like, okay, well, they say it's a top quality product, but like, why is their content so bad then, right? Like me personally, I would kind of doubt this product, because I'll be like, well, they obviously did not invest, enough in their content or anything else to kind of support their high quality product. Also in Germany, like they like when you see made in Germany, but they also love to see made in the US, because it's also like a proof of quality as well. So that's like also one of the things that they really like. They really like sustainability. They love high quality products that solve your problems. You know, you really have to have like top-notch content for Germany, but it does really pay off, as we have like some of the clients that are doing amazingly well. If they're making basically the same revenue as they're making in the US on all European marketplaces. So that can happen. It's not for all products. It's not going to work for everyone, but for ones that it does work, it works really, really good.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Pearl, one mistake I see people making, also not more specific to content, but just expanding too fast. And I've seen people who expand too fast and they need to pull back as a result. So, you know, instead of going to just Canada, they're going to Canada and Europe at the same time, or they're going into UK and Germany at the same time. And I think you'll do much better by going a little slower and being focused and going into like one country at a time and being focused on that country, having success, and then moving on to the next one, because I think it is a lot to manage around inventory and logistics. You know, my advice would be to take it slower than really fast when it comes to expanding internationally.
100%. I even take it a step back. I always tell people, make sure you're successful in your native country first. Don't 100%. Don't allow it to. Some people let themselves neglect whatever they did really well till then by, you know, looking at something else. Make sure you maximize the best you can with something that's the most familiar with you.
Well, it's a good question though, right? Because if I want to go into, let's say, beauty product, I may not be able to break into that product in the US market, but I might be able to break into that market in a less competitive international market. So maybe a question to the rest of the panelists, you know, are there times where you'd recommend going first international instead of your own country? You know, when you're kind of looking at, you know, at the US getting harder for sellers to have success in?
I love that question. So what I would say is from what I see is, you know, it's all based on saturation from when people make that decision to start expanding. Not always, but a lot of the time it's people that get really frustrated with, you know, what's going on. That would be one reason. And then of course, you know, expanding just to expand and add revenue to their business. But what I hear all the time is, you know, it's so saturated, the market right now, hundreds of listings with the same item that I have, and I'm going to go to Canada or I'm going to go to the UK, and then, you know, maybe 5 sellers that I'm competing with, and they're all at a much higher sell rate. So that's something that people would want to look at. And of course, you know, you do want to make sure that from a compliance standpoint, that there isn't anything too tedious involved, you know, when it comes to, let's say, beauty, right? Somebody on the, you know, chat over here, I see you asked about aerosol cans. That's something that's an issue, right? Aerosol shipping by air obviously is a no starter. It's something that's considered dangerous goods. But maybe we can help you find a different way to ship it. But things like this, when it's a little bit more complicated than just, you know, a generic iPhone case to ship, or pens, or I don't know, I'm just looking at what I have in front of me, but something that's so simple to expand, that's something that you know, there's saturation in the market right now. You might want to go to another marketplace first. But the minute you're going to start having the product compliance and all these other things coming into the equation, I would say to take a step back and think about this more than.
I just want to add that by, you know, just doing like a lot of people don't even think like, hey, would this work on another marketplace? Like we've seen like so many products being like super successful, like wooden toys, let's say like in Germany, like in European marketplaces, just because of that sustainability. Whereas like in the US, they're like not doing like that great. Or like smartwatch, like if you go to like brand analytics, like smartwatch is like top 10 search frequency terms, like in most of, let's say, European marketplaces, or like Japan, completely different products are like popular than in the US. And then maybe if you're like, you know, selling some of the products in the US, you're not doing that great. Why don't you just kind of check like other marketplaces? And I couldn't agree more with Liran said, that you should like take it slow and not expand like everywhere at the same time. A lot of people never do any sort of market research. They never do that. They just think that their product is going to be successful as it is. And if this is a big mistake, it will cost you a lot of time and money, but you definitely have to do a little bit of due diligence before you get started. And I would also never recommend someone, yes, do whole pan-European, do like all 7 countries, or do like Japan and UAE and Mexico. And like, that's not how it should work. And people should basically have, you know, kind of a business plan before they start expanding. But there are like tons of opportunities out there, especially because there are so many ways how you can get ahead of your competitors on smaller marketplaces.
Jana, do you generally see the reviews moving across the board, like in all the markets, or what are some of the challenges? Sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't see it.
Yeah, Becky, you could also answer on that one. Let's hear from both of you on the reviews aspect.
Yeah, well, I would say that, I mean, like you said, like sometimes you see them, sometimes you don't. Like I would say that now it's like 60-40 from what I see with our sellers, like that they do get global reviews, but sometimes they don't get global reviews. So I don't know, like it's kind of mixed, you know, from what we've seen that happens. Hopefully that changes for the better in future, because that would be, you know, the expansion would be like much easier job for everyone in that case.
Awesome. Becky, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, we've also seen that, but we've noticed Amazon will pull in written reviews from other marketplaces. So if you're selling in UAE, for example, and you have a US product and you're selling the same ASIN, they'll actually pull in all of the ratings and reviews from the US. It just says they're from another marketplace. However, I think getting back to something Jana said earlier, when you're really trying to build trust and connect with people in a new market, it's really important to have those local reviews. So even though you might have some ratings, I don't think they impact your listing and ranking in the same way that they do in your native marketplace. And it's just really important to always be getting new ratings and reviews.
So that actually leads us into our next question, which was actually going to be for you, Becky. When getting started in a new marketplace internationally, what are the easy ways to get some reviews?
Yeah, well, one thing that we always emphasize here at eComEngine is making sure that you're compliant with Amazon's policies. I think that's especially important when you're working in places that you're not as familiar with. Just make sure you're crossing all those legal I's or T's and dotting the I's, and I'm sure that others have things to say about that as well. But it's similar to how you would request reviews here in the US. You could use the request a review button in Seller Central. You could send a custom review request through buyer seller messaging, or you can automate either of those with software like Feedback 5, and there are several others. You could send product inserts. I think Jana might have more to say about that, like the translation piece of that. And also I want to note that we're noticing more suspensions happening when it comes to product inserts. So if you are requesting reviews with inserts, you want to be really careful about the language.
What are you seeing is the reason for what are sellers doing with inserts that they shouldn't be doing as far as like the reason for suspensions?
Unfortunately, the very blatant, the leave us a positive review, a lot of the language that Amazon's made it really clear that they're not okay with. So I know, like, I'll order things and receive product inserts like that frequently just here at my house. So I think they're just cracking down. What if I have a get 10% off your next order and I send you to a landing page? I mean, are you seeing issues with that, or? I haven't specifically. I've seen really like obvious ones, but it seems to vary, and it's kind of like I know Amazon's been doing some test buys, so it's kind of a question of who receives your package, or if your competitor is reporting you, which I think Chris McCabe has talked about that a lot as something that he's been seeing more and more in his business. It's competitive out there, guys. You got to be careful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Destaney, I would love to hear from you. As we're speaking about the challenges of reviews, and Liran, I want to hear from you after that on when it comes to advertising. What are the biggest challenges you're seeing when it comes to advertising for international marketplaces?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing we've seen is keyword research and just balancing the focus of making sure you know exactly what you're trying to get ranked on, because it's going to be quite a bit different from what we typically see in the US. And then expanding upon that, a lot of people kind of struggle like, hey, do I need to translate every single last keyword? What does that look like? So just managing all of the marketplaces at scale can be really complex. So we've kind of had to make sure that we're aligning all of our PPC with the SEO and the translation work that's being done. So we're not ranking on the wrong keywords. And so that way we can go in and continue our keyword research. So just making sure your diligence is done incredibly well, and then layering in bid management to help mitigate some of the keyword misalignment that you might miss if you're not working directly with the translator.
Very interesting.
What we do when it comes to keyword research for those markets, I imagine Destaney, maybe you do something similar. We're using Cerebro. So we're looking at that market, we're looking at the top sellers, we're reverse engineering the keywords that they're ranking for. And then we put it into a Google Sheet. And in Google Sheets, there's a translate function. And you can translate that into English to see if that word is relevant to your product. So that's a good way of doing keyword research if you don't necessarily speak the language, and be able to have relevant keywords. And then I would say, as far as the challenges, I would say, again, making sure you're keeping up on all the KPIs that you need to when you're managing, multiple markets, multiple products. You need to have enough bandwidth to be able to to manage ads in multiple markets. Each one is like a totally kind of different account, based on conversions and your competition. And if you're managing in Europe and the US, it's like managing like five, 6 accounts. So just having the bandwidth and the ability to have the focus to manage it.
Okay. So next question is going to be for Chris. For all those in the audience who are planning the big exit, right? The big escape. What is valuable? What makes an international expansion valuable?
Yeah, good question. I mean, there's a few components. I mean, not only it being just a pure math game, right? So I'm expanding into international markets, and now, I'm gonna add an accretive $5 million to my top line, and also, a specific amount will flow into your EBITDA. Therefore, a 5 times, 6 times multiple of whatever that accretive amount is means you make more money. So it's a little bit of a math game, which is always good. I think secondly, too, the most valuable thing you can do for a buyer, whether it's, I think for an aggregator acquirer, it's still valuable. For a private equity buyer, it's extremely valuable. But when you've got all the components in place for international expansion, you've proved the concept, you've gone into the markets, you've done the hard work of getting VAT, you've got real IP, international IP, you've gone through all the testing, regulatory, all the compliance, that makes you an extremely attractive asset. And like I said, to the aggregator, it just shortcuts everything. And to a private equity buyer or family office, or even a corporate strategic, which is probably, more than likely unfamiliar with third-party marketplaces around the world, it just puts you in a much stronger and attractive position when it comes to selling the company, selling the business.
Chris, is there, let's say I'm looking to sell my business in the next 6 to 12 months, I have, $5 million revenue in the US market. Am I better off leaving that expansion up for the aggregator, or going in myself, ahead of it?
I think there's other components that you need to decide before you kind of look at international expansion as the component to leave, as like the carrot on the stick, or quote, meat on the bone. It's definitely one thing, but it hasn't been proven yet. So really it's a bullet point, right? And it could either be vaporware, or it could actually be like, this could be worth $25 million, right? So the better thing to do, if you want to use international expansion as part of the marketing process to make your business more attractive, go ahead and just do it, and just get it out of the way. Go ahead and try, and go ahead and do it. And so that's probably what I would say, for sure. And in this current market, I tell a lot of people to wait and sell. That's a whole other webinar.
Very interesting. I would love to hear from you. With your Amazon global selling background, I'm very curious to hear, how does Amazon drive global selling for international sites? What's the process? Speak to the audience a little bit how that works.
Yeah, sure. So obviously, even for Amazon, global selling is a key growth driver for the international business. I think the most important way for Amazon internally is to look at selection benchmark, right? So they really use Amazon.com, the UA side, as the the kind of golden standard when it comes to selection. As everyone here knows that, Amazon flywheel starts from the selection, right? They want to have everything on earth. And which site has the largest selection today is Amazon.com. So internally, basically, Amazon always use the benchmark, the selection by subcategory, and then map that into their international website, look at the glance view, look at the sales record, and see what are missing in UK, in Japan, in Australia, and things like that, and then really leverage their internal tools to find ways to fill that selection gap. So from what I see, I think that's one key strategy for Amazon to really grow their international business. What I do want to say is even Amazon have been doing global selling for many years. Amazon has invested like billions of dollars in terms of seller central tools, in terms of logistic, in terms of pricing, and listening translation. I don't think they figured it out yet, right? So I mean, they're making great progress, and that's why there's still a lot of really high value solution partners out there really fill that gap, like you guys feel to really do the cross-border logistic, for Payoneer to do cross-border payments. There's still a lot of opportunity for the solution partners to really kind of enhance that flywheel.
Wow. Very, very interesting to hear it from the Amazon perspective. That's pretty brilliant. What do you anticipate happening as we move forward? What do you think is going to be the continuous drive factor from Amazon? What do you see? What are their goals here?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think US still remains a pretty large investment for Amazon global, right? Look at the number of fulfillment centers they're building in the US, the speed of delivery, even during the COVID. However, they are accelerating really, really fast of making the international expansion really easy for the marketplace sellers, no matter where you're based. What I want to say today in this webinar is, I think, of course, work with Amazon as close as you can, because they definitely control the rules. They have a lot of cool technology, either already launched or in the pipe to be launched. But in the meantime, really have a go local plan in day one, right? So what I mean by that is, you don't want to outsource your global expansion to Amazon. You want to leverage whatever they have, but in the meantime, really take control of your own destiny when you think about expand internationally. I also agree that you should start slow. You don't want to go to like 10 countries at one time. Cross-border selling is super high friction, and Amazon is not making that easier, right? So how do we really learn about one local market and really put that local customer experience that's the top of the priority when you develop your international expansion? I think that could be your key differentiator. Thinking about product compliance, right? So it's not easy, right? So which agency do you work with? Which law firm do you work? Because a lot of people they do that sometimes. They may not necessarily align with the Amazon policy. So there's a lot to learn about a local market regarding regulation, regarding tax requirements, regarding product compliance. All of those will require dedicated capital, dedicated resource to really figure out the local customer experience. So I would say have a local strategy while you're going global is really, really key.
That's very smart. Yeah, I had a customer that I presented at the Prosper show with, and he told me that was one of his key elements of success, where he makes sure wherever he's expanding to, there's always local help that he's getting or a local backup plan. So just in case anything goes down, like what happened during COVID, where Amazon shut down their FBA locations and all that, he had a backup plan. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I saw a question about what is the largest marketplace after Amazon.com. So I think somebody said Germany is definitely the second largest one after UK and Japan, right? So there's many other international marketplaces growing pretty quickly, in Latin, in Middle East. So Amazon obviously is also expand pretty aggressively internationally as well.
Pearl, there was a question.
Yeah, also just add one thing about someone mentioned the Middle East. Yeah, you mentioned it. So I was just in Dubai of the affiliate world, and I met with some people from Amazon over there, and they said that the sheikh from Saudi Arabia, he invested $1 trillion in the expansion of their e-commerce. So I just think that like the Middle East and all of that is going to be insane the next couple of years.
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
Pearl, there was a question in the chat about the new option for using the European fulfillment network. So it looks like you can now store in UK and be able to ship into Europe, where with Brexit that was taken away.
Right.
Yeah, but it's crazy expensive. It's
Crazy
ridiculous.
expensive. Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah,
sort of
so-
like whoever's using the NARF program, same idea, like the NARF program for Canada. It's the NARF program now for the UK into Europe.
Got it. Okay, yeah, I was gonna say I don't know that much about it, so maybe you can. Somebody was asking about it, so you're saying generally it's expensive to and not going to be worth it for most sellers to use that program.
So what I would say is it's sort of like a stepping stone when you want to test out what those marketplaces are like, and you already have a presence in the UK and you don't want to take it to the next level, where Stefan, we'll hear from you in a minute, where there's so much tax registrations that need to happen once you start storing your product in all these fulfillment centers. So it's sort of a way that Amazon tells you, look, we would love for you to sell also, aside from the UK and Germany and Spain, Italy, Poland. So we're going to give you this program where you could, test it out. We'll ship the product directly to your customers to see, if people are interested in your product. But the next step would be go ahead and send product directly there, because the rates that Amazon charges, the fulfillment fees are outrageously high, like Jana said. So David, let's hear from Stefan. I would love to hear what Stefan has to say.
Yes.
The whole VAT
Next
registration
question.
regulation things. Yeah.
VAT is one of the first things you have to do, and you have to do it right. So Stefan, which parts of the VAT process are the most burdensome for sellers when expanding internationally?
Mm-hmm. Well, let me just take a step back and a bit give an introduction of when is VAT applicable in Europe, specifically for those who are new to the expansion. And I think it's one of the main causes of not knowing when VAT is applicable that actually results in a lot of problems down the line. VAT is basically applicable in European countries as soon as you start storing inventory in a country, as soon as you sell from one to another, or if you sell locally. So keep these three parameters in mind whenever you sell to Europe, that you might come across this obligation. And as we were discussing earlier, expanding into Europe in one go can be a painful process from VAT perspective, because each of the individual countries like Germany, UK, Spain, Italy have their individual processes that you have to comply with. They're not very quick and they're not easy. They require attention. They require patience, and they might put you on hold to sell in the various jurisdictions. So it's a lot easier from an emotional perspective to go gradually on the European countries, unless you have a full-blown tax department to help you address some of these admin issues and tackle the German, Spanish, Italian processes at the same time. So I would highlight definitely registration as being the first hurdle and the biggest one. And then once you get into the monthly cycles, it gets on a lot easier. There's various Amazon programs that cater for that. There are other SPM providers who simplify how VAT can be done. Taxually is one of those in both an Amazon preferred program and some other programs that Amazon is running in this space. So it's something that can be done easily if you have the right tools and you have the right partner. But definitely something that is important is to think through the resources you will need when getting into the registration process in Europe.
Very cool. Thanks, Stefan. Liran, I would love if you could share. We spoke a little bit before the webinar. You had some data that you prepared that sounded really, really interesting. Do you want to share some of that?
Yeah, so I can share my screen. Just one note, this is kind of based on our data, so it's maybe somewhat limited. But I have some charts looking at US, Europe, non-US, and Canada data around advertising. So I can share my screen and kind of go over what I have. Maybe you'll find it useful to look at it. So I have a bunch of data just related to ACOS around markets and specific ad types, as well as tacos and cost per click and conversion rates. So just to go over it, this is data around ACOS in the US versus other countries. You see that Canada is actually the lowest, so definitely presents an opportunity to get sales at a lower cost. Europe is actually higher in terms of ACOS, for us at least. You can see also across the different product types. Again, another opportunity: sponsored brand video ads in Canada, significantly cheaper than in the US market. Going over to conversion rates. So again, we see the highest conversion rates across sponsored products in the US. And next we see Canada. And then again, some more data around sponsored display, sponsored brand. So you do see US having better conversion rates. So while we see a better, and I'll go over a better cost per click in other markets outside the US because they're less competitive, the conversion rates are better for us in the US, which leads to a little bit of a lower ACOS, except for Canada. But the cost per click is significantly more expensive in the US than the other markets. So you could just see that the difference between Europe, other non-US countries, and Canada around cost per click, for sometimes being half or a little bit more than that, in terms of the difference in cost per click. And you could see it here just across all of advertising. US significantly more competitive in terms of cost per click. And then lastly, our tacos is better in the US, again because the conversion rates are better. And then the next best market is Canada. So just some data. I'm happy to share this with anyone also after if they want to reach out and just look at this data. And then lastly, click-through rates pretty similar, but again somewhat better in the US. This may be an anomaly based on our data, I'm not sure, but click-through rates are somewhat better in the US as well. So again, it's kind of based on the data that we have across our clients, but I thought it was interesting to kind of look at and see. Definitely to me, Canada kind of jumps out as a good opportunity in terms of expansion.
Wow, this is brilliant. And I just want to say to expand to Canada is super, super easy. So if you're listening now and this is the first market that you're looking to expand into, Canada might be the right place for you.
And we've had clients that sell, better in Canada than in the US sometimes, just because of the competitive nature.
We see that too. We do see that too.
I'm curious to hear from Destaney. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about how the competition compares across marketplaces.
Yeah, I would say we're seeing pretty much the same in competitive categories, supplements, tech, things like that. We see CPCs being upwards of 4 to 5 times as high in the US as what we see in UK and Canada. What we typically see a drop off on is branded. So anything that has like strong brand awareness in the US, that typically becomes an issue. And I think the tacos metrics that Liran went over is super important because as an industry, we're seeing tacos kind of increase overall, especially in terms of service changes, how oversaturated advertising is on page 1. It's definitely something to be cognizant of because oftentimes people reach out to us, my tacos is too high, we need to cut back on ads. Tacos is a 2-part equation. You have advertising spend, but you also have organic sales. And most of the time, the people who are wanting us to cut back on ads aren't happy with the result when you cut back and you realize your top line sales are decreasing. So using that to really start solidifying your organic rank now before the international marketplaces become too competitive is super, super important because we can assume a lot of what we're seeing in the US is what's going to happen everywhere else. CPCs are going to increase, organic rankings is going to become more and more difficult. So anything you can do to really solidify that while costs are a lot lower is something you should probably take on right now, even if your margins are going to decrease a little bit.
And to Destiny's point, you know, whatever you're seeing in the US, right? Like Europe is just behind that by, you know, a couple of years in terms of what's going to come. So, you know, sponsor brand video, still a great opportunity in Canada, for example, right? Or still could be a good opportunity in other international markets while it's more saturated in the US. So what, you know, the US should give you good indication of what's coming to those other markets. And, you know, I bet if, you know, a lot of US sellers wish they probably were more aggressive in 2018 and 2019 to kind of get that positioning, like Destaney mentioned. It's kind of the same thing for Europe. You know, if you can get that positioning before it becomes more costly, it's a good opportunity to do that. And if you can jump on ad types that are not as competitive but are new in the European markets, you know, you're gonna have an advantage, because in the US they're already kind of the same cost, let's say, as sponsored products. So you want to jump on those opportunities when they come out. And sometimes we see, you know, brands neglecting it.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm just going to answer 2 questions real quick from the audience. Simona is asking, what if you're expanding from the UK to Canada? Is it still better than the US if you don't have huge resources? So Simona, I would just say it really depends on the product. If your product is very saturated in the US, you might want to look into expanding to Canada. Again, all based on data. I would tell you just to check to see if there's a huge demand for your product in either marketplace and how many sellers there are. And then Ariel, you had a question if we have any relationships with 3PLs in Canada. Yes, more than happy to share that information with you. Just feel free to email. My team actually just put in my email there, or you can reach out to Toby. Toby, if you could just put on who we recommend, that would be great. Okay, so Becky, what was always really something that I was wondering is what are the best practices and what is the best way of sending review requests when you want to get results in other languages, right? So how do we go about that?
Yeah, I think it's important to also highlight that that's actually a requirement now in Amazon's communication guidelines update from, I think, fall of 2019. The pandemic makes it all kind of challenging for me to remember exactly when things happen, but you are supposed to be sending your review requests in the buyer's preferred language. So the easiest way to do that is using the request a review button. That's automatically translated. It's sent by Amazon. You don't really have any control over it, but our sellers have seen really good results from it. I think in the first 10 days of using it, we saw like a 41% increase in the number of reviews. So we've had really good results with it. We have a lot of really big sellers that have been really happy with it. But then as you're growing your business in a new marketplace, and as you're thinking about branding and really trying to build that presence, I think that's when you might want to consider doing something that's more tailored, especially if you have a product that's really, you know, unique or special, and you kind of want to say something more specific to the product in your message. As long as you're following all of Amazon's guidelines, you can totally do that. So that's when I would recommend reaching out to our friends at YLT and saying, hey, this message is working really well in the US. I want to localize it for Japan or UAE or wherever you've expanded to as you're building your brand more and more. But you can automate review requests with software, or you can do that through Seller Central, and really asking is the easiest way to get reviews, and that's the most effective that we've seen.
Wow, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, great. So yeah, we wanted to hear from you a little bit. Do you by any chance have some slides that you prepared for us that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I did. I know it's an open webinar, but I did prepare a couple of simple slides. Let me share so we can go very quickly here. Let's see.
Yeah, Josie, to answer your question. Yep. Thanks, Liran. This will be recorded. I mean, it is being recorded as we speak.
Can you guys see it?
Yes. Well, not anymore.
Yes. What about now?
Now we see your desktop, not your.
Oh, okay. So I have to. What about?
There you go. That's
there we
okay.
go.
Perfect.
Yeah, just you know, very quickly, right? So we're talking about expansion. I think it's an extremely important growth drivers for all the sellers. You know, the key point I want to say is, you know, you do want to think globally. The opportunity is not just in the US, it's everywhere, but try to sell, you know, locally. And what I mean by that, I mentioned about really, Amazon is trying to do everything on their own. They really care about customer, experience. They want to have that end-to-end customer obsession experience, but try not to outsource everything to Amazon. Really take control of your own destiny. Cross-border selling is super complex, and of course, very high friction, as we all know. But if you think about the high friction, but it is also the entry barrier that makes it super rewarding if you figured it out. Because of the entry barrier, it will make the long-term, financial benefits super rewarding. So these are the key points I want to share with the audience. Like I said, Amazon.com is the benchmark for all Amazon international sellers sites when it comes to selection, fulfillment, and pricing, and all things about customer experience. And I can also say, I know I see some of the questions about which international site I should expand. What I want to say is, even internally within Amazon, there's a FBA export program. I'm not sure how many of you know. Amazon basically enable, if you are an FBA seller, internally they opt you into that program, and then they basically make that available to international customers on Amazon.com. So they can come to Amazon.com and browse international shipping available selection, and then make a purchase, and then Amazon will flashly buy that inventory from you, and then through Amazon internal fulfillment network, ship it internationally, right? So that's a really strong demand signal for Amazon internally to figure out, what selection are demanded in which part of the world, and then they use that insights to really kind of drive, local selection listing, right? So that's one thing that they do. And if you happen to have a content manager, either paid or free, maybe it's worthwhile to try to ask them, hey, are there any kind of like demand signal that you can share in, for my selection in terms of international, glance views or purchase? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. The policy changes all the time, but if you can ask, there's something that definitely will help you to determine which market you want to go next. Global selling is the most strategic growth driver for Amazon's seller business. Once again, always use .com as the benchmark, but even Amazon has not really figured it out, especially for cross-continent selling. I think they did a really good job in terms of North America remote fulfillment, for US to Canada and Mexico, and between EU, the pan-EU and EFM, the European Fulfillment Network. It's pretty good, right? So in the region, but cross-continent selling, there's a lot of work to be done there. Work with Amazon closely. If you can afford a content manager, or if you have somebody reach out to you, please use that as a resource. Really understand their policy, their guidance, to really follow the rule, but really develop a local plan from day one. There's a lot of frictions, there are a lot of competitive advantages. From my experience working with a lot of sellers in the US, I think product compliance, seller fulfilled logistic outside of FBA, and tax regulations / IP laws are three most critical local experience that you want to gain long-term competitive advantage. And of course, last but not least, as you're thinking about international expansion, working capital is key, right? You need some capital to really hire people, to work with the local solution providers, to add more inventory, and all of those require capital, right? So find a really great working capital partner where you can lend and really really easy and a seamless way to help you grow. And if you feel fuel your local experience is key. So those are the key points I want to talk about from a global selling perspective. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you. That was very informative. So I have a question. Should I just enable export from Amazon.com and let Amazon fulfill my international orders instead of just listing locally and letting FBA from there take over?
Yeah, you should.
Which model is better?
No, that's a great question. I think many years ago, it was more like, you have to click, you have to sign up. I believe they made that automatic, like really automatic opt-in unless you opt out. So meaning, if you're FBA, you probably got an email, maybe you paid attention, not, but just trust me, you already opt-in unless you opt out. So meaning your FBA selection is already available to international customers, if they qualify and satisfy for the export eligibility, right? So Amazon internally have this, import and export eligibility engine to determine, where your product can be shipped to. So yes, that's again goes to the point about, check with your account manager if those demand signal can be shared with you. But ultimately, the traffic, the experience is locally, right? So if you really think big about your international expansion, go local is must.
Meaning, Pearl, I guess the answer is it's not a replacement, right?
Exactly.
It's not a replacement. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
It could be a way for you to detect and understand the demands, but ultimately you want to go
because
local.
your products aren't available with Prime shipping, and you can't drive ads to drive sales. And so you're not even going to necessarily get those best demand signals by just you're not going to get much sales necessarily just turning that on.
Makes sense. So Jana, based on this, I have a question for you. How do you know if your product is a good fit for another marketplace, right? So we have Amazon's way of doing it, where they're shipping out your product and creating the need or the want for people since it's available. But how can I research myself? Like what advice would you give?
I would definitely say that you should find some of the important keywords for your product. Look them out a little bit. Like it can be like helium 10, it could be brand analytics. Just like to see like how many competitors you have, what are the pricing, and what I really think it's important, and that's what I get this asked a lot of times that I ask my team is like, would, let's say, Germans buy this product? So like you can like go to like a random like a Facebook expert group and be like, hey guys, so would you buy this product? Because we've had these situations where like we had a seller, he was selling, this was a couple of years ago, and he was selling a t-shirt. It says like Mr. and Mrs., but with this like really like weird drawing on it. And he was like, well, this is not working and all my other products are working. And literally my whole German team was like, we would never buy, this is like not German aesthetics, like we would never ever buy this. So I also think that apart from like having to see like the competitors pricing and everything, you have to have like this box populi that will tell you like, hey, okay, this is a really interesting product for our marketplace. Because this is also what sellers do when they want to like expand to Japan. You have to ask Japanese people like, well, will you buy my product? Because you don't know, like you have to test like the marketplace also that way. So there are like a lot of different ways how you can test the marketplace that can show you like if it's worth going there or not.
Very cool. Thank you.
Next question is for Stefan. When you're registering for VAT, what are the timelines for a seller? Give us a little insight into that.
Well, it's a free component thing. Firstly, it's dependent on the speed and the time you have on your hands to collect and compile all the information that you need. Secondly, depends on the service provider you choose to facilitate the process. And thirdly, depends on the capacity available from tax authorities' side. So in worst case, in countries which are flooded with VAT registration, it can go up to 5-6 months, but the average is around 6 to 8 weeks in the various jurisdictions. It's usually, it takes 2-3 weeks for sellers to collect all the information, all the documents they need. Then it takes a few weeks for the providers to organize translations, help out with notarizations, guide them to right institutions to collect the missing documents. And then it's about a month and a half for tax authorities to procure the VAT numbers.
Okay.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you. Chris, switching back to what makes the most value for your business, right? When you're looking to sell. What would you say are the most important components? And I'm curious if the audience would jump in at the same time with these three options. On A, is it IP? B, is it testing, compliance, regulatory, or C, VAT?
Yeah.
Audience, feel free to jump in.
Please jump in. I would say, look, I mean, they all carry a lot of the same weight. It's almost like you can't have one without the other, right? You can go into a new marketplace and not have IP, but you're just not well protected, right? You don't really have that strong moat going in. And obviously testing regulatory compliance can really put you in a pretty bad spot if you haven't gone through that process. That is really confusing. And so anybody who already has that up and running and has a logistics model in place as well, those are some very, I'd say some very valuable components to the actual sale process for sure.
A lot of buyers, if you don't have IP, will not buy the business, right? I mean,
sometimes, I mean, yes and no. They will. The answer is they will buy the business. It's not a requirement, but it definitely makes you a much more attractive target. And I would say where we're rotating into, where aggregators specifically, which is the liquidity that's really chasing Amazon assets, private equity for sure. That's part of we're getting pickier in terms of what we like to look at and what we don't like to look at. It definitely makes you stand out from the crowd because it protects you. And
Chris, so when we talking about IP, are we talking about trademark or we're talking about something beyond that?
No, actually having intellectual property, like having utility patents and having, it's past trademarks. I'd say trademark is probably the weakest component. I mean, when you're actually building out real patents that can protect you internationally, design patents, utility patents, et cetera, it makes it much harder. I came from the baby product space. And so, we would sit there in a factory in China and try and understand how we can design around a design patent or a utility patent. And I'm telling you, it takes a lot of money and it's very hard. You can do it, but you've got to have a ton of capital. And so we're talking about small business owners that are competing against you on a marketplace. So if you can go ahead and have that, it's some of the highest and best protection. No, trademarks, I definitely don't include. I mean, yes, that's kind of like, hey, do you actually want a ticket to the ball game? Like you have to have a trademark, right? But if you actually want to have better seats, then having those utility patents, having real IP, something you can put your hand around, it creates a nice moat.
I personally have 3 design patents. I personally have a different opinion on design patents. I feel like they're fairly easy to get around just because of the ones I was able to enforce and the ones I wasn't able to enforce as compared to utility, but it might depend on the product and,
it depends on the product. It definitely depends on the product and it depends on exactly what you're trying to, I mean, look, I've seen some stuff in my past in baby products in particular, where, I mean, our factory was able to design around it within a matter of what felt like 10 minutes. And our general counsel was like, yeah, you can take that to market.
Right.
So it really just depends on how much, I mean, really you're getting down to product innovation. Like how innovative have you made this particular product to actually go through the process to protect it, right?
Right.
With that particular IP. So yeah, that's pretty important. It just makes you very attractive.
My personal advice to sellers is I wouldn't overly focus on patents, because once you have patents, you also need the legal funds to be able to protect those patents too, and go after people and deal with. I personally dealt with lawsuit in protecting my patent, and it was pretty expensive to do. So just from personal advice, I think focus on making a great product. But I would say if you're newer, I wouldn't be focused on patents as a seller. Personally.
Yeah, I mean, look, I appreciate that, and I would agree with you. I would also say if you've got something really special, like you just designed a true problem solver, I would actually say the opposite. I would say go and protect yourself as fast as possible, because you just open yourself up. I mean, the minute you're in public domain, you opened yourself up now for everybody to go, I think that's a good problem solver. I wonder if that guy has done the legwork to become, like a serious player in this particular marketplace.
I think
that's when guys can come after you quick.
I think it's a good point. I guess I would say it depends if you're like an inventor type, or if you're like a seller just trying, to come up with something on your own. Maybe it's a little bit different. But if you're the inventor type, then yeah, probably,
Yeah, I think if you've taken a garlic press and you've added like another lever on it, then yeah, I would probably say don't waste your money. But if you just invented a brand new carrier, like a baby carrier that in particular does something, something for lumbar that's never been done before and really helps protect your back, then 100% you should be racing towards a lawyer and get legal.
Just gave away my idea.
Sorry, Liran. I didn't mean to, man. I'm so sorry.
File a patent quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, so our next question is for Destaney. Destaney, we're wondering if you could share with us what are some of the best practices when managing multiple marketplaces at scale?
I would say to kind of follow the context everyone else has set and not go too wide. Don't try to run every single ad type across every single marketplace and every single keyword in the beginning. Thankfully, we do have lower CPCs across the board, so there's a little bit less harm in doing that. But take some of the data Liran showed, focus on, your sponsored products, the video assets, the things that are very easy to manage at scale and can be rolled across all marketplaces, and focus on that. If you try to spread yourself too thin, even just logging into ad console is a pain because you have to log out of one marketplace, log into another marketplace if you're not using any software. And that can overwhelm a lot of people. And when you're looking at localization, translating your headline search ads, it adds up really quickly and a lot of people kind of freeze. So start small, focus on precise keywords, your 80-20 for your ad types, and then build upon it once you have all of those in a good spot.
Okay.
Liran, I would love to hear from you, continuing the conversation on advertising for a minute. When it comes to advertising, how do you deal with the language barrier?
Yeah, so like talking a little bit about before, obviously, using services and translating your listings is important, so you have the right keywords, and then really leveraging keyword research based on competitors. And I mentioned earlier, I think Destaney actually posted in the chat here a video that they put out on how to go about doing it, pulling in the keywords into a Google sheet and then using the translate function. You're able to identify which keywords are relevant to your product after using Cerebro. And then from there, I think you really need to manage based on the data and understanding what those keywords mean and which ones are important. So for us, the language component is not really a big barrier in terms of running the advertising.
50 characters for German headline search ads. That's the biggest issue across the board. Coming up with anything that's under 50 characters for a sponsored brand ad is not fantastic when you're having to translate.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Okay, David.
All right. So the next question, we have 2 questions left, guys, and then we're going to open up to the audience to ask questions one-on-one. So Pearl, I think Becky has a question. I think that's on you. And then I'm going to ask Jana the closing question as well.
Okay, so Becky, last question, and we're gonna, like David said, we'll get the audience in. Why is getting local reviews so important?
I think, like I was talking about before, the way that the reviews are displayed, having those local reviews are going to show up at the top of the listing. But also to Jana's point earlier, when she was talking about some of the cultural differences and just language differences between different marketplaces and the terms that are used, those keywords that people are using in your reviews are going to show up in your search ranking. They're going to impact you just because they're being used organically as people are leaving written reviews. So you really want, like for her example, where she was talking about nappies versus diapers, you really want those UK reviews talking about nappies to help propel you in the UK marketplace. And then I think it also just adds a level of trust because people are interested in hearing from people who are like them. So they want to know what other people in their area are saying about your product.
Okay. All right. So the next question, the last question is for Jana. Jana, we're wondering if you can give us an example of localization for one product across several marketplaces and their competitors as well.
Sorry, that was basically that. I kind of put all of my questions into one when I was opening the webinar tonight about like the diapers and the nappies, like a very, simple example. And then in Germany, basically they have something completely different how they call it. And to just circle back to this compound words, like they would use majority of the keywords for this diaper bag product are going to be all compound words, and they're going to be way different than in English how they're built and how you search for them. And basically the long tail keywords are not going to have anything. If you would just translate that, say that's German keyword to English, you would not get a diaper bag. You would get something similar to a diaper bag, but it would not be a diaper bag. So that's also something to think about, because I know a lot of people still translate keywords with, any sort of Google Translate, or even if you hire like a Fiverr, like Upwork freelancer, just make sure that they understand what Amazon is. Like, you cannot expect to hire a freelancer then that they know that the title for Amazon has certain limits or bullets or what the best practices. So you really need to hire someone who knows how to handle your content. Whatever you do, just make sure that they are on the same page as you are, and your brand, of course.
Okay, thank you. All right, Pearl, are we ready to open it up?
Let's do it. Guys, you ready?
All right, Yoni, we might need you in the back end over here to open up the audience and put everybody on stage.
Oh, just like that. So you want to go to the final round of closing up the recording, closing up the live, and then backstage, bring in front stage so they can, turn their cameras on, their mics on, and engage.
Yep.
Got it. Okay, so let's officially sum this up. Say thank you to everybody, because we're about to
Yeah,
take
so
it
the
private.
recording's ending. So thank you everybody for watching.
Yes.
Thank you to all of our wonderful panelists for giving us the amazing insight. We're looking forward to more webinars, more similar styles, different styles. At the Ecom Cooperative, we want to always try to do things a little differently. Once again, anybody who's not already signed up to the Ecom Cooperative, please visit the site. It's free to join and always will be for Amazon sellers, and help us continue to build this community. Again, thank you everybody, all our panelists and attendees for joining today. And let's ask.
Yeah, if you're watching this outside
Thanks,
of
everyone.
Zoom, just click the Zoom link so you can you're able to join us in the Zoom session, because it's gonna be private. It's gonna be intimate. So we'll see you there. If you're watching this outside of Zoom, I'm gonna stop the stream. Thank you again, everybody. Hold on.